Hello and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say with me, Kathleen Retourne. We are an organisation that aims to reconnect people in conservation by spreading stories of all the incredible work that people are doing around the world. If you haven't done so already, please do check out our Facebook page and you'll see lots of different stories and different interviews of all the work that's being done. Today, I am very happy to be joined by Rachel Harris, and she is the founder for Elephant Human Relations Aid. So Rachel, if I could just hand over to you, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the organisation.
Yeah, hi. So firstly, I'm not actually the founder. I'm the current managing director of EHRA, but EHRA was founded by Johannes Harsbrook back in 2003, along with other local people here in Namibia in Swakopmund. So I ended up here in 2004 and have been here ever since. I come from the UK. I think you can still probably hear my accent still fairly strong. And I did a business degree, in fact. I was at Brighton University, if anybody knows about that. And at the time, you know, when I was younger, I thought I wanted to have a big career in business and was like heavily interested in going into marketing. And then after doing a year out in industry, I suddenly realized that perhaps I might not enjoy that so much. So I actually, after finishing university, then I decided, okay, let me have a look for a job in the charity sector. I just felt that I couldn't spend my days, you know, putting my energy towards something I wasn't really passionate or interested in. It just felt a bit futile, to be honest. So I was lucky to get a job at Capital Radio, which was in the centre of London in Leicester Square, and they had two charities there actually, Help a London Child and then one that gave help out at Christmas time. So I was doing events there for them, and one of the main things that we did with these overseas treks, which was super popular in the charity sector during that time. So people would join us for like a 6-7 day hikes, you know, along the Great Wall of China, or we went to New Zealand and Morocco and all sorts of places. It was really great. And the first trek I did was here to Namibia, and I'd never done anything like that before. And I actually don't think I had been camping since Girl Guides, and honestly, I hated it then. So it was quite eye-opening for me. And after that first trek, going home back to London, and I distinctly remember being on the tube, you know, squished up to everybody, and just life didn't make any sense anymore. And I had met Johannes, and so he later down the line, maybe 5 or 6 years later, started Elephant Human Relations Aid. And at that point, then I decided to move over. EHRA was started because the desert elephants had come back into one of the main areas where we work in the Uchab River, which for conservation and for tourism was amazing. You know, they were always there, but they'd gone during the South African War years, where their poaching was just unbelievable. And when they returned, there were now people living there. So of course, the two just didn't know how to get along. A massive generation gap of knowledge of how do you live with these elephants that are coming through your farms. And there were water points put up by government when people were resettled there that now were mostly these very fragile windmills, which of course for an elephant was super easy to push over. You know, they can smell water, so if they couldn't access water at the farm, they could easily put up pipes and break that down. So of course people were really scared and living without water, which if you see some of the farms that we work at, I think people can look through our Facebook page. There was a solar water pump we put up recently at a farm called Luakop for an old lady who's 83. She's in the middle of nowhere. Like, you know, when you say that back in England or something, it means something totally different to here. She's really in the middle of nowhere. So of course, to be without water, you know, it's not a funny matter. So local people were asking the government to get rid of these elephants, you know, move them or cull them. You know, everyone says take them back to Etosha. But of course, elephants are supposed to be there. is how the whole ecosystem's working, and they're needed. And for tourism as well, it was a major plus. So there was a big group of people here locally who then started a pressure group together and did some fundraising, started Elephant Human Relations Aid, and really all worked together to form what's now become an organisation. Still, like years later, we've done really well. Yeah, and so when I moved over, we had an idea, or Johannes had an idea, to set up this volunteer programme, which would bring us income, but it would also give us the manpower to build these big protection walls, which we had decided was the solution to the problem. Protect the infrastructure, make sure that the water points aren't broken, and elephants can still drink water, but they can't cause any damage. So it was an excellent idea, and volunteering as a way to have a holiday was a kind of new thing at that time. So before I left work, I can say it now because I won't be in trouble, I suppose, I used to sneak off for meetings and set us up with different agents to help us get volunteers. And to be honest, I think we were just at the right time. And I can't say we were busy straight away, but we definitely had groups all the time, even if it was just small ones. And so steadily, that we carried on. So my main role then with EHRA was actually living in this very remote, again, village, and with a dog and a very slow internet connection, and we just got going from there. And with like one old Land Cruiser, a couple of tents, and it was really rough, I have to say, but a great experience and great grounding for being able to operate here and being successful here, I think.
So I know that when you and I kind of briefly been speaking over email, normally when people think of threats to elephants, they think of poaching and ivory. But you actually said that wasn't the issue with the desert elephant. So is it just normally the human-wildlife conflict that's the big issue there?
Yeah, so the absolute main issue is human-wildlife conflict. I think since we've been going, we know the elephants since 2003, most elephants have died because of conflict. There's been very few natural deaths. So it's by far the hardest thing to solve. And, we kind of had a very good strategy with the protection walls and with our education project that I think we'll chat about a bit later. And people had really got to know how to live with the elephants. They weren't really causing them a problem. The elephants had become very calm, which they weren't in the beginning. We used to get really frighteningly charged at often by these elephants that were very scared because their association with humans had been so aggressive and deadly, basically. Whereas now the elephants, they come into our camp and stand into the kitchen, and eat the tree, and you can be safe away from them. I'm not saying we go close to them, but they're a different type of elephant nowadays. They're much more calm and relaxed. So so that had been working in the communal lands, and that had been working really effectively, but that took a long time to get to that point where the conservancies turn around and they don't want the elephants to be shot. They actually, everyone's fine with having them there. But then this year these elephants went onto commercial farms, and then we're back to square one, and much difficult challenges to deal with, and much higher conflict because there's a lot of money involved, and farming practices which are within nature and a natural environment, which the two are just difficult to go hand in hand. So it feels like it's non-stop. You sort of thought you got to a point where you sort of cracked it, and then we're back to square one, it feels like. It's a big thing. The other thing that is specifically talking about the one population of elephants we have in the Uchab River, the other thing that's really a massive worry is their calf mortality in terms of like newborn calves. So since 2014, 9 calves have been born, and all 9 have died. So we haven't had a successful birth since then. So there's obviously something wrong, which we're trying to get to the bottom of. But there's a whole myriad of reasons why that might be, and conflict and stress could play a massive role on it. Interaction with humans as well can play another role. These elephants are in and out of human settlements all the time. There's a big primary school you know, where sewage is often leaking down into the river, and the elephants are there, the cows are there. Salmonella has also been pointed out as something that could be causing it. So yeah, elephants nowadays they're living with us. They're living with our livestock and with us. And yeah, that's it's easier if you're a communal farmer actually than it is if you're a commercial farmer with big electric fences and expensive cattle and game. So yeah, massive challenge actually.
So we kind of touched on it a bit earlier. I mean, I know that you guys do a lot of work with the local communities, and you have your own kind of separate project there called Peace. Can you tell us a little bit about this, how that works, and have you been seeing a change in attitude since you've been doing these works?
Yeah, so yeah, the Peace Project, we set it up, I think, about 10 years ago. And the idea was that, you know, the protection rules were great, but still people didn't understand what is this elephant, and actually had a normally 100% wrong perception of what it is. People thought that if you see an elephant, it's going to come and get you, like it wants you to be dead. That's it. And yeah, and the idea of living with elephants and being able to live with elephants was just something very scary, basically. And I think it's, you know, it's human nature. If we're scared of something, you know, we're fearful of it, we're intolerant of it. You know, the thing, it goes hand in hand. So the Peace Project then was sort of coming to really underpin the practical work that we were doing to, yeah, really empower people with that knowledge that you need. How do you sit in that hut that's made of clay and sticks and accept the fact that you might have 12 elephants outside? You know, and also for you to behave in a way that it's okay. You know, you're not going to get in any trouble, and you know what to do. So I think that's where we've had a lot of success, is because we're really giving people practical and realistic information on what to do, you know, not dressing the whole subject up, just how do you stop your dog from barking? You know, don't scream at the elephants if they're there. What does this elephant think? What are these family bonds? And as soon as you start expanding into the world of elephants, and people start to understand their behavior and the level of their intelligence, and how fascinating their society is and what it is that they need, then empathy starts to come, you know. And yeah, then I think, particularly in the areas where we first started working, in the Western sort of communal areas, people are really, I think, empathetic towards the elephants, I can say. And, you know, I think to the point that they're almost quite fascinated by them, and say that they're theirs. It's no longer your elephants era, come and get your elephants. They consider them to be something that they have. And I think, yeah, they hold it with a bit more of a feeling of, you know, respect and acceptance, for sure. So yeah, so anyway, so the Peace Project then was set up, and it's got different focus groups. We educate school kids, and obviously local communities, farmers and people just living in a subsistence manner with people. We also work quite a lot with the game guards from the conservancies to make sure that they know how to, actually, for one thing, identify elephants, because they're the ones on the ground feeding information into the conservancy as well as us, but it's important that they know, you know, which elephant is which. And also how to be safe, because often they're having to track elephants on the ground, you know, on foot patrols. And so, of course, you need to, your tracking skills must be good for one thing, because it's a huge area, but you need to know how to be safe. We also train the government wardens as well. Often they don't have too much existing knowledge and training about elephants and elephant behaviour. And again, you know, we're trying to create a platform basically where we're all on the same level. You know, the people are treating elephants all in the same way. So it's also tour guides to make sure they don't go close to elephants when they're doing game drives and that kind of thing. And that we all understand that our impact is huge on those elephants. And if we're going to be, you know, going too close in a game drive vehicle to take photos, well, that might really irritate the elephants to the point that when they walk into the school, which has got 300 primary school kids living there and running around the whole time, and the kids might be outside of the school grounds, well, you know, you're putting people in danger. So yeah, so that has been amazing. And it has, I think, 100% change of perception rate for the people that come to attend it. And people are really scared, you know, to the point that it's not uncommon for adults to actually wet themselves when they're on the car, when they see the elephants for the first time. So they first spend a day learning about the elephants mostly in our camp, or it could be under a tree actually, or just at the village. And then the next day we take people out into the desert, and then we actually show them the elephants so that they can see them, the behavior that we're talking about, and see, okay, what does that mean? And look how that mother is doing that, and look how they're listening, and then see the decision that the matriarch is, taking to then carry on walking. So they can actually then put, what they've seen into practice. And what does an angry elephant look like? Often people say, look, he was flapping his ears at me, and then, understanding he's just cooling himself, and that's made a brilliant impact. So it's an amazing program actually, and something that we're really trying to expand, but super important for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I also 100% agree that if you don't love something, you're not going to protect it. And by them seeing that these are incredibly intelligent social animals, then, as you say, they're going to be more prepared to actually help them.
Yeah, that's the idea. Definitely, it is definitely working. And even actually now with the commercial farmers, people don't know about elephants. I mean, I didn't know about elephants growing up, and so you don't necessarily know about them, do you? And so, in fact, I think when people start to hear about them, it's a fascinating animal, isn't it? And in the way that they are so connected in everything that they do, they've got so much to teach us. So I think people really get that afterwards, and definitely have a better feeling towards them, and for their ability to live with them. That's the other thing,
I also know that you run some local internships as well for the local Namibians. How did that idea come around, and have you seen some success stories from there?
Yeah, so we have one of the universities here called NUST. They have a very popular, can be bachelor's degree in nature conservation. So we take the students for their work integrated learning. It's actually a 6-month placement. I wonder how that came about. We've done it for really a long time now. I suspect we were approached by students and then probably thought, oh yeah, and then had a good experience with the first ones. So we have a MOU signed with the university now that we will, always accept the students, and it's always been brilliant. I have to say I'm a little bit biased sometimes and tend to take girls, just because Namibia, conservation in general is fairly dominated by men, and there's no reason why a female can't do the jobs that the men are doing. So I am a bit biased in that respect, I suppose, but they have all been fantastic. And in fact, the first intern that we had was called Martha, and I remember just thinking, she looks so shy, and they have to work with the volunteers, which is quite full on, to be young and suddenly with a group of different aged international volunteers who may or may not want to be told what to do by a young girl. So, and they have to be prepared to live out in the bush. And I think a lot of people sign up for the conservation course, but think they're going to end up in an office, maybe in a national park or something, and don't realise that they might actually end up camping, and like me, might actually end up being one of your big passions in life, and being out in nature, sleeping without a tent, it might become something that actually is in you, that you need to do to feel good. So Martha was so terribly nervous, and she told us in the end that in fact she used to get back from the build week and then be so scared she would just go into a tent with her laptop, and she was just watching movies just to kind of totally block everything out. And we thought she's just super uninterested, and that she just wasn't really bothered by it. But later she told us when she left that in fact she was really scared the whole time. But she did it in the end. And at the end of the 6 months, I mean, she was a different person, and the university lecturer said, "What did you do to Martha?" So I think it's just what she did for herself. But she's now works for the Desert Giraffe Conservation Trust, and I can definitely see that did no end of good. And I mean, all of the all of the interns actually. Last year's intern as well, a girl called Anna, was also amazing, and I know she also said to us that it gave her such a lot of confidence in herself. And it's good to see other women, isn't it, getting into Land Cruisers, driving them, camping, cooking over a fire, you know, being with elephants, being in nature. And it I think is, I don't know, inspiring sounds a bit big-headed, but I think if I was young and I was going into conservation, then I think I would feel more comfortable to go forward if I saw people doing it as well.
And I also think I don't think inspiring is a big-headed word, because also when they're going back to their communities, young girls who may have never thought about going into that kind of role are now seeing someone succeed, and they can actually say, okay, someone else has actually done it from where I live. It is a possible thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure with your experience as well, you've probably seen exactly the same thing, and it's just, yeah, you just have to sometimes go out of your comfort zones, don't you, to see what it is that actually is you, perhaps.
Yeah. And you might not realise what it was until you actually start doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you kind of, we were talking about it at the start, that a lot of what your work is based around is with the volunteers. Do you want to talk us a little bit about what they would typically do? And then also, because obviously everything we're talking about now comes back to COVID, what the situation is there, and if people can still come, or is there other ways that they can support?
Yeah, so the volunteer project then, which we've won awards for, as I said, it's been going since 2003, 2004 full time. And gosh, I think we've had about 3,000 volunteers through our doors, in fact. And the main core volunteer program then was running every 2 weeks of the year. Actually, we take 2 weeks off over Christmas, where there's Christmas and New Year, but otherwise it's running. And you know, we weren't always fully booked, but we were certainly booked, you know, and through the busy tourist months, we were flat out booked. And the volunteers, well, we've realised now with not having them, I mean, there's a photo, you can see exactly how hard they work. It's physically building these large protection walls, which you can just see in the background of that photo. You can just see the bottom of a windmill behind the car and a big wall around it. And they were physically building these walls. And since COVID, and we haven't had our volunteer teams, we've done really well actually with local volunteers, which has been brilliant, but we've only had a couple of groups because of the lockdowns, you know, we had to keep postponing these trips. And otherwise we were sending out our staff, but I'm not joking, I think we've only built 2 walls since March, you know, whereas normally we can do one, about one a month, maybe 2, depending on the size of them. So it really was the backbone of our conflict mitigation work, you know, and without them, we've been nothing but useless, to be honest, at the wall building. So the volunteers do a week of wall building, which, as I said, is manual work, but we've had all sorts of people. It's not necessarily a gap year type of experience, although obviously students do come too, or people who've just finished university or school. We have a lot of retired people coming, and we even had a lady who was 87 the one year. And she was like, it was a breeze, it was nothing for her. Everybody else was like keeling over in the heat, and she was as tough as anything. So it's really for anybody, locals as well, Namibians too. And yeah, so they spend a week doing the building of the wall. They live out at the village, wherever we're building. And we set up a very basic camp there, like super basic. All the camping's on the fire, cooking's on the fire. And the volunteers take it in turns to be on duty every day. So you form your own little mini community for the time that you're there. They do have a day off on the weekend, and they go back to our base camp, which is this super special place where elephants currently are. I think just as we left, they walked through camp, which is always their trick to avoid me, it seems. And yeah, they have a day off there, and then they go out on what we call a patrol week. And we have different motivations for each patrol that we're going to do. There's different groups of elephants that we're looking at, especially now we've identified a further over 40, 50 or so elephants that we need to get to know as well. But yeah, so there'll be different things that we need to look at, whether there was a new calf born perhaps, or there was an elephant not looking so well. Now we've been desperately trying to identify which elephants we have after we physically had to push them off these commercial farms. We had to actually get them back to the West because so many had already been shot. So there's a lot of different reasons for going out and checking on what's happening. But those patrols are super special. We don't take tents. We just sleep under the stars on a tarpaulin. So it's really back to basics. It's probably fair to say you might not see anybody else that whole time that you're out. So it's a great experience, and I think probably a lot of us are craving. Well, I'm sure lots of people in Europe are craving for the space and the world outside of their four walls. So it's an amazing project, and I think the staff are just so fantastic at EHRA. Everybody is the most amazing team, and so what the experience that they give to people is by far the thing that makes it the most successful. But yeah, it's a great experience, and doing something different and switching off your telephone. Okay, we're on Facebook now, but you know, getting off Facebook and social media is a great thing to do, I think. So yeah, it's fantastic. And then we also had family groups coming to volunteer. That became really popular, actually. And they would not tend to do the wall building because it would be a bit heavy for 7-year-olds, but we'd go to some of the schools that we work with where they can very usefully paint classrooms, you know, paint out dormitories. Some of these schools are in the biggest mess that you've ever seen. Some of our families have donated, you know, mattresses for the whole school afterwards. So it's been a really nice way to connect that project together as well. We have a great school partner in London called King Alfred's, and they've come every year since we started. So this was the first year they couldn't come. And, you know, the pupils, they actually fundraise for the trip and the renovation work we do at school. And they go on more of like a wilderness vision quest challenge where they also have to do a lot of hiking and learning to read maps. And that also didn't happen this year, but hopefully they'll have 2 trips next year that will come, so the kids will still get to come. So we had all sorts of trips happening. There's also an amazing woman called Kathleen who's from the UK, who's a adventurer and conservationist and all-round superwoman, and she was bringing groups out of all women, actually. She called it the Matriarch Adventure, and we'd been doing quite a lot of those, and they were superb as well. You know, the women were coming and doing hiking, elephant tracking, yoga, you know, sleeping in caves, sleeping outside, and all of those are postponed till next year as well. So things have been on hold, but we do get our first volunteers on the 12th of October, which we're really excited about, all 4 of them. But it's, you know, the pioneers are here. So that's fantastic. And there's a local woman joining them as well. And we do have bookings for the rest of the year, but they're very few. So we are open, and it's not that hard to come into Namibia. You just need the negative COVID test. And you know, once you have that, then entry is fine. And there's some super cheap flights over here at the moment via Windhoek and Frankfurt. So yeah, in fact it's the time to come to Namibia. It's super quiet. It can be really busy with tourists here. So if people want to go and do, you know, extensions into some of the national parks, you can be the only people there at the waterholes. If you can travel now, it's actually a fantastic time to come. Yeah.
Okay, so you heard it here. You have to get yourselves over to Namibia. Okay, I've only got one more question left. So if you have any questions that you'd like to put towards Rachel, please pop it in the comments section, and I will do my best to read them out. If you're watching this and it's not live, but you're watching it later, and you do have a question, do still put a comment in, because one of us will be able to look and someone will be able to get back to you with a response. So I always kind of like to end on a bit of a positive note. So I was just curious to find out, since you've been working there, what's your favourite success story and what's kind of been the highs of your career?
It's a good question, and I know you know, you sent me the question, so I was having a bit of a think about it earlier, and I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the EHRA team and like what it's become, and the different people that have come in and gone out and come in, and you know, it's grown so organically, and it's become a place that's like a joy to work in. And even for me, the people here, somehow it's just the most amazing people who've like come to us and are working for us. I'm sure some people hear that and they're like, yeah, right, everyone's going to say that, and I may be too disconnected because I'm the MD and stuff, but it doesn't feel like that. We really I'm really proud of that, from not being from Namibia, and the culture being so different. I'm really pleased with the creation of this amazing group of people and this like absolute movement of people who have this passion to do something, to try. I mean, we're failing dismally a lot of the time when it comes to, the elephants and their, survival rates. They're still being shot. I mean, look, we now just these elephants had gone somewhere we didn't know. It wasn't that we weren't looking for them. We had no idea that they would have moved so far away. And when we got there, it was too late. Yeah. So, it's hard to feel, success if you're measuring it by that. But if you step back and look at what EHRA is and what it stands for and the people that are involved, and that includes the volunteers, it's this amazing force of good, which is way beyond any expectation I had for myself, to be honest, in terms of, I never thought I'd have a company of my own. That wasn't necessarily on my radar. But it's not really mine. It's just that it just feels all very inclusive, and it seems to touch people and brings out the most amazing passion and motivation for doing something. So that for me is probably, on a personal level, my most my best feeling I have about EHRA. And I guess in terms of the impact we have, because of course we have had a really massive positive impact, and I think only continue to do so once we get ourselves involved in something. We had difficult meetings now with these commercial farmers, but instead of doing nothing, we've decided to do something. Let's try what can make this situation better. And does it really help by being stubborn and saying, we're not working with commercial farmers, they must sort themselves out? It doesn't help. It doesn't help to just sit back and do nothing. So, I'm pleased with how we're able, to provide some solutions and actually then, and definitely make a difference. And and I know the one thing that I was really happy with, which has been a massive turnaround, is with the conservancies and the communal farmers, is that they now, like I said, they consider those elephants to be theirs. And when they found out actually that the elephants had moved on to these commercial farms, they went themselves, we found out, to the government, to the minister, and said they want them back. I mean, I don't know if they thought they were going to get on a plane or how they thought they were going to come back, but they said, those are our elephants, they're being shot there, we now have so few and we want them back, because they see the value in them for the income that's being generated in terms of revenue. People have accepted to live with them and they want them there, and I thought that was amazing. And they did the same when the famous bull was shot the other year, which was also, beyond sickening and still something I just don't try not to think about. And that also said the same. They said, he's our elephant. And they had actually said, you may not shoot him. So that change in attitude was vastly different from the meetings we used to have, where I remember being in a meeting where, in fact, a female elephant had been given as a hunting permit, which, we just thought was disgusting, because you can't shoot them when you shouldn't be shooting them anyway. But for a female, and that lack of the lack of knowledge about the elephant's society and all of that not being taken into account into these management decisions is just unbelievable, and we've definitely had an impact on that as well. And in those meetings, I remember it was just all about money. And I distinctly remember the Conservancy chair lady just saying, no, she doesn't want to hear anything, shoot it, just shoot it. That's it. No questions asked. There's no ways you're going to persuade her otherwise. And so without a shadow of a doubt, that change in attitude is because of EHRA. And so that is at least one way to go forward. And you can see that things can change, even if it doesn't feel like they might.
I mean, I think what you were saying as well, what you were touching on with the volunteer side as well. I mean, I've been a volunteer myself, and I've run volunteer projects as well. And one of the things that I absolutely loved about it was it becomes a great leveler. So because, you know, I'm 38, but then there'll be people there that'll be 17, there'll be people there that'll be in their 70s. And you all have one common thing that you're all passionate about. And it's a great way of kind of meeting different people from all different sides of the world, all different backgrounds, cultures, that kind of stuff. And you end up having like friends that you never thought you'd have friends with.
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. And I know that, you know, I hear that people meet up still, and we have a lot of people that come back and volunteer for us as well. I mean, that's on most trips, we would actually have people who'd been before, and there's some people who come every like year, and they've come for like 6 years, but they still come every year. There's one chap who he'll come twice a year if he can. And so, I mean, that's also an amazing thing to offer to people, and, you know, people to get such a amazing, you know, a lady locally actually, a Namibian woman who was on the trip we did a couple of weeks ago, which was also all women actually, interestingly enough. And one of the ladies said at the end that it was by far one of the most amazing experiences of her whole life. But she's Namibian, you know, and I didn't really think before about that actually she can go camping out there whenever she wants to, but it's the experience and the camaraderie and the input they get from the team, and it's the elephants, you know. Elephants speak to us, don't they?
Yeah,
you can't ignore it, you know, when you're facing one or you spend enough time with it, you know, you're gonna feel it, aren't you, and get affected by them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we're going to start wrapping up now. We've got some really lovely comments on Facebook, and people saying that the volunteering that they've done was the best they've ever had. We've got other people saying that they've been going through their pictures recently and reminiscing on their times when they were volunteering with you. So yeah, it sounds like what you guys are doing is an incredible work. You're making a difference not just to the elephants and the local communities, but to people around the world as well, which is what more can you ask for?
Yeah, no, amazing.
So before I go, is there anything that you'd like to wrap up with?
Oh, just to really encourage people to, please come and volunteer. We really need to get our project back on the ground, because, like I said, it's not just about the financial strain that we're under. It's about the manpower. We just don't have enough hands, and I'm sure if any of the staff are here, they'll be telling you about how tired they are. So, if people are willing and able to get on a plane, I can't encourage you more to come over here. It's an amazing time to travel, and I must also say a huge thank you to the volunteers, because by far they were the ones that kept us going. People donated immediately as soon as we asked for money, when we saw, okay, listen, we're really in trouble here. And amazing that they stepped up and stuck their money in their pocket, and people are giving all the time. And we probably will have to ask again, because I think we're going to be in trouble for, you know, this isn't over, is it? And like you said, you know, the company that you were talking about is closed until March, and I don't think we'll be back on our feet for the next couple of years. I think we might be okay by about July next year, with regular people coming. But for sure, it's a tough time continually to come up. But yeah, that's also from the bottom of my heart and everybody's. That support was literally overwhelming. It was brilliant.
I think if there's anything positive that can come out of this lockdown and COVID experience, is you actually get to see the generosity and kindness of humans, who actually do really kind of want to help out in these difficult times.
Yeah, exactly. And I was saying to you, know, if it wasn't for the financial anxiety, it's been a really important conservation period for us, for EHRA, probably one of the most important I think we've ever had. And if we didn't have the funding, we couldn't have responded to these problems. You know, like, I'm not joking, the guys went out for like a week to go and get these elephants off the farm. And I went now for the last couple of days out with the team on these commercial farms. They're vast. They're like 15,000 hectares. And I actually said to Marcus, sure, you know, we were on the farm where they were. And I said to him, I had no idea what I was asking you guys to do. Like, you know, it sounded easy to go and get these elephants off the farm. And I mean, that took all our resources. All the staff were there. Every car that we had was there, along with the government. They also were there. But, you know, to have that ability in this time, to have the money to say, do it, go. I mean, that was amazing. So yeah, so important. So yeah, and by far, you know, saved some of those elephants' lives, and luckily they've stayed back in the West now. But what a mission, unbelievable, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Rachel, so much for coming on today to talk with us. We've really appreciated it. And I hope everyone back home has enjoyed it as much as I have. I found it a really interesting chat. And honestly, if you can get yourself out there, you're going to have an incredible experience. And again, if you're watching this later, then please do add any other comments or questions. And if you want to watch any other videos of different conservation interviews that we've been doing, then head over to What Does the Giraffe Say on Facebook, and you can see lots of different interviews with all the different incredible people around the world who are doing their bit for conservation. But yeah, for me, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.